Hi, this is Kerry Artak with Wicked Stocks, bringing you your weekly Mag 7 update, where we walk you through the Magnificent 7 stocks. I did record this video, by the way, on Monday, December 15th, 2025, and I start, as usual, with Microsoft Corporation. This is a channel structure that goes back several years, 3-4 years. We did top out in this Y zone. There are two structures. There are sister formations, I call them. Back in July, we pushed through the inside channel and tagged the top channel. It held nicely, as you can see. And since then, we have, fallen away. We did push into this zone again back in October, but have collapsed back. Long term, and we're talking into later 26 perhaps, holding below this 549, 575 area will keep the 383 zone in reach in the coming months. I don't have a clear signal or indication for this, but when you test a channel top, you must allow for the longer term possibility of falling to the channel bottom. I'm talking a rising channel structure. We could trade inside of this structure for the next several years, perhaps. Now, we do have a sell signal in play that's been in play for, about, a month or so. And that was breaking and closing below this horizontal channel structure that is at 490.37 this week. I've also added the high of the low that was put out about 3 weeks ago at 492.63. So this low 490s is our resistance through January, and below which this market remains prone to falling into the upper to mid 420s. We do have a sell signal in play, and if there's any position to be made in Microsoft over the next month or two, it is on the downside. It's either you're out of an investment in Microsoft if your time horizon is 1 to 2 months, or you're playing the short side. Maybe some of you, and this sell signal has been in play for about a month, maybe you've already bought 425 strike out of the money puts, perhaps. I call this a 2 to 3 month downside target. We've been consolidating now for the last month, but we can fall away into this 425.36 to 427.97 area. 427.97 is a full channel extension to the downside after closing below the 490.37 structure. The full channel as a targeting mechanism is 427.97, and it happens to coincide nicely with the downside 5/8 Fibonacci off of that April low against the July high. So this is a solid bottom-picking zone of support. But the truth is, it really, over time, especially as we continue into August of next year, and I'm not going to draw this right now, but I will just go back to this chart here. This 383.06 is climbing and will, as you can see in this image, converge with this target anyway over the next 6 to 8 months. This is a good zone to buy into, especially if we were to fall all the way back to 383.06, where we actually could bottom out into 27. If we do close this week above 492.63, then we've got a sell signal rejection. That is in itself a sign of strength, and I would anticipate within a couple of months the 549.14 channel top, part of a range, once again up to 575.04 that may contain buying well into 26. On to Meta. Meta, rallied up to and tested last week, certainly the 676.55. This is a descending channel that goes back about 4 or 5 months. It can contain buying through January, and below which this market remains in reach of 552.17. I'm going to say over the next couple of months. I think it could be 3 to 5 weeks maybe, but by the end of February, we could find ourselves in the low 550s where we could bottom out into possibly through the second quarter and round up again. If we were to close below 552.17 in the coming month or two, then we're looking for 437.16, this long-term channel bottom that goes back to 22. If tested, can absorb selling through all of 26, and we can round up from there. Now, I don't expect to see 552.17 if we happen to close this week above 676.55. So the way I would define this market into the first quarter is it still remains prone to falling back into the 550s over the next couple of months below 676.55. But if we close above 676.55 this week, then we've got a meaningful buy signal back to the high area, 785 to 796. That is the high settlement price and the actual high itself from August. But I do think as we continue into the second quarter over the next 3 to 5 months, a settlement this week above 676 874.55 does carry with it the very real possibility of 874.52, which is a long-term 3-year channel top able to contain buying well into 2026. It would become a clear-cut 1 to 2 month target if we were in the coming weeks to close above 785.23. But both of these upper levels in reach with a settlement this week above 676.55. On to Google or Alphabet. We did close this gap between the low of the high and this previous high back in November. I mentioned this as a bottom picking zone. I mentioned if we close below 306.42, that is an exhaustion of a vertical move that would carry with it likely continued erosion, perhaps into the upper 220s within 3 to 5 months or less. Now we've got this rising channel bottom that I've just been pointing it out. But now that it is so close to 306.42, and next week will be lined up right with it, that I'm also going to include this as our downward pivot point. In other words, if we close below 306.42, but we do not close this week below 302.41, I think it's worth waiting another week to see how this plays out. This is still bottom picking territory as we move through December and into January. This is such a vertical move, and we're in such uncharted territory that there's really no clear target that you can point out. It's just, if you're going to sell Alphabet, it has to be on weakness. And a settlement this week, Friday, below 302.41 is such a move. I do think then aggressive continued price erosion into the 228.35 area within 2 or 3 months of closing below 302.41 would be the play. And this is a zone that could contain selling well into 26 if tested. Until then, above this 302.41 and the 306.42 area, there is nothing to be but long Alphabet. It still remains in a technical bull move that is substantial and relatively short term. It really began in last September, when we closed above this channel structure for the first time. Let's move on to Amazon. Amazon, back in November, tested this, rising channel top, part of a range up to 273.37 that begins at 255.08. That is an area that can contain buying well into 26. We've basically tested it already, fallen away, and now we've closed below the low of the high. So we are kind of in a sell signal mode. Not kind of, we actually are in a sell signal mode below 238.49. However, there is rising channel support that I'm going to jump to actually right here and show you that we tested this also back in November, and we're just above it now. So, bottom line, if you're a 2 to 3 week swing trader, you could certainly bottom pick 216.51 and sell 238.49. We can continue filling this wedge out over the next month or so. But if we were to close below 216.51 this week, then I see a significant sell signal 2 to 3 months back to 176.22, where we actually could bottom out well into 26. I don't expect 176.22 unless we close below 216.51. Until then, I think you can bottom pick this 8-9 month channel bottom, 216.51 to 224.59, because from here we can round up and back above 238.49. So of the two levels, it really is 216.51 that is the most significant. I think you can go long in this area. We don't really have a buy signal yet. That would, of course, come with a settlement above 238.49. But I think you can, accrue a long position that could play out through the first quarter, holding above 216 to 224. We can wind our way all the way back into this 255.08 to 273.37 area, which would then be indicated with a settlement this week above 238.49. So I'm going to go back to this chart and just show that if we close above 238.49, after having actually tested this 8-month channel bottom, we should push into the mid 250s to the lower 270s. And that becomes a clear-cut objective anyway with a settlement above 238.49. On to Apple. We cover Apple every single week in our paid subscription platform at wickedstocks.com. You should check it out. But this is just one snapshot of about maybe 6 or 8 that I show in our weekly Apple video. Apple has been testing a long-term 5-year channel top at 282.61. And, you must respect this market's possibility for falling away as we continue into later 26. In other words, if you're a long-term position holder or a long-term investor in Apple, you do want to see this stock close above 282.61 by a full 1% margin. I would add that to 282.61. If so, then we enter a long-term buy signal that should, over the next year or two, result in this full channel extension at 382.32. But until then, I think there's nothing to be but out of this market long term, and even playing the short side. Now, I think your next sell signal for the short play would be a settlement below 274.36. And, in our video, I give initial targets near, mid, and long term. We really kind of break it down, but this is just one of a number of snapshots that we present in our weekly Apple stock video. On to Tesla. We provide Tesla analysis for free every single day, as you may be well aware, on our Wicked Stocks YouTube channel. But this is just the basic 411.47 is an 8-month channel bottom. We tested over the last month or so. Can contain selling through Q1, and above which this 530.02 6-year channel top remains a 2 to 3 month target that can contain buying well into 26. We can fall away from here through 26. Downside, if we close below 411.47 in the coming weeks, then we have a sell signal through Q1. 313.50, a 5/8 downside Fibonacci from this April low against that more recent November high would be our 2 to 3 month target, where we could bottom out on a quarterly basis. But I will also mention, as I always do in the videos, that if we were to close below 411.47, you must allow the very low 200s. This is like 203 and change within a half year or so. Not that I would expect it, but if you're, you can just see how this stock has behaved over the last year and a half. And so closing below 411.47, we could be in for another significant down wave into the low 200 region. But I would say you can expect at least 313.50 within 2 to 3 months. On to Nvidia. Nvidia we cover every single day in our wickedstocks.com paid platform. We rolled it into wickedstocks.com, but this is a broad brushstroke analysis for the week ahead. We've got 194.53 that can contain buying through January, perhaps. We are kind of in a sell signal below it, anticipating 166.60. Initially, we thought this was 2 to 3 weeks. It's taking its time. We're kind of in this two-sided near-term framework, but still holding below 194.53 will keep 166.60 in reach over the next few weeks. 166.60 may well contain selling through all of the first quarter, and from here we can round up within several months into this 219.64 to 228.94. These are long-term wave counts that I don't properly show here. If in the coming weeks we close below 166.60, we have a significant sell signal in Nvidia that should play out through the first quarter, the following 2 to 3 months, then likely to test the 122.83 long-term channel bottom, where Nvidia could bottom out perhaps through all of 26, and above which a clearly defined long-term bull trend remains intact for Nvidia. Upside, if we close this week above 194.53, we actually have a buy signal through January, anticipating then over the next month or two, upward continuation into the significant 219.64 to 228.94. Now, if you trade Nvidia or you like watching it every day, especially if you trade it every day, you should go to wickedstocks.com and take advantage of our 5-day, our 14-day free trial. We've extended our free trial to 14 days. So if you miss your Nvidia analysis, go check us out at wickedstocks.com. We'll give you 14 days free up front and no questions asked. I'm going to continue and finish with Palantir. Palantir, about a month ago, tested this channel bottom, as you may be well aware, and we pegged this as a level that might actually contain selling through the first quarter on a monthly basis anyway. So 159.99 is trend support, able to contain selling not only through January, but through the first quarter, and we can round up here quite easily, should round up here quite easily to new highs, as long as we are above 159.99. On the way up, I've been mentioning 186.96 as a level that can contain weekly buying pressures. From here, we could fall back to 159.99 over the next few weeks. If we close above 186.96, I'm going to point to this chart here. Initially, within 2 or 3 weeks, 209.93, but really ultimately, and I'm going to get rid of this because it looks a little noisy, ultimately, Holding above 159.99 will actually keep 240.14 in reach. And this could be a 2 to 3 month play. If we close this week above 186.96 by the end of the first quarter or sooner, we could find ourselves at 240.14. So bottom picking 159.99, this is a channel after all, will keep 240.14 in reach over the next, I'm going to say 3 to 5 months. And on the way up, we have two key points, 186.96, and we have another that I erased that I'm redrawing right now at 209.93. Both of which can contain weekly, possibly multi-week highs. But if you're looking at the big picture, you're bottom picking 159.99 and you're holding out for 240.14, both of which rise over time. Last thing I'm going to say is I'm going to go back to this chart, and that is if we do close below 159.99, we actually have a good high into later 26. I would expect within a month or two, this 125.41 high that was put out back in February, and I think over the following 3 to 5 months or sooner, possibly within 2 to 3 months, this full channel extension at 88.69 wouldn't surprise me in the least, where we just might exhaust ourselves to the downside on a significant bear move. But the bottom line with this chart, if we close below 159.99 and your time horizon is anywhere from 3 to 5 days out to 3 to 5 weeks, no compelling reason to be long Palantir. Until then, there actually is. I'm over 15 minutes here. I am going to leave it at that. Please click like, share, subscribe. Check out wickedstocks.com. We offer a 14-day free trial on our daily SPY, Q, Nvidia analysis, our weekly Apple stock, S&P 500, NASDAQ 100, and our 2 individual stock picks that you receive every single week. So I'll be back, of course, next week with another update on the Mag 7. You have a great week.